And welcome back to the Capitol Report. I'm Steve Lance. Newly released documents showing that more than 160 Republicans, including several in the current Trump administration, as well as in Congress, may have been investigated by the FBI during former President Biden's term. It's a probe being called Operation Arctic Frost. Joining me to discuss is Bill Caruso with Archer Public Affairs and Republican strategist Chet Love. Great to have you both with us. Chet, let's start with you. This is a very concerning report, obviously, along with a curious trend here we've seen from, Operation now Arctic Frost, Crossfire Hurricane. The report shows that these investigators requested over $16,000 in travel funds to conduct over 40 interviews. What is your initial reaction to all this that we're learning?
This is just more of the same from the Democratic Party. We've consistently seen again and again that Democrats misuse government resources to attack their political opponents. We've seen this in, again, 2022, this Arctic Frost investigation where the government wasted tons of resources, ended up with no substantive prosecutions, and simply was attacking and wasting government resources there. Now you fast forward to what we're dealing with now with the government shutdown. Again, Democrats are misusing government resources and simply trying to attack their political opponents while not bettering the American people. The FBI should have been using these resources to protect the American people in 2022. The American people lost over $10 billion with a B due to cyber fraud, which is under the jurisdiction of the FBI. And so what we saw, again, was Democrats attacking political opponents instead of protecting the American people.
Bill, it's obviously a concerning trend that we're seeing that sort of favors the Democrats, whether it was Crossfire Hurricane, pre-bunking, that various intel officials trying to pre-bunk the Hunter Biden laptop story, now this. What are your thoughts, particularly on Senator Grassley's statement that says this investigation shows what he calls, quote, unchecked government power at the highest level?
We'll see. With all respect, Republicans had a majority in the House and investigated the entire Hunter Biden scandal, came up with a big nothing burger. We heard from Comer time and time again about smoking guns that never were produced. I'm troubled by this as an American, right? Not as a partisan. I don't, there's separation of powers. I'm not a big fan of lawfare. I think it's a stupid game that both parties have been playing, and it doesn't serve the American public. But, January 6th happened. And the FBI was looking at a lot of different things, and they were investigating these things. No one is above the law. Now, they may not have found anything. That's great. That's really good that happened. Now, if there's something more here, and the Republican-led Congress now is going to investigate that and find something more, then we should follow the facts and see where it goes. But I'm here to sit here and spike a football now and say, hey, because this investigation happened, it was a bad thing. No, there were other things that led to this investigation that were the reason why people were being looked at. And I think there was some modicum of restraint shown. For example, I read a report that Ted Cruz's phones were looked at, but they weren't looking at content. They were looking at time and who was called. So let the Republicans investigate again. My friend here wants to talk about the government shutdown and the waste of resources. We agree. But I think, endless investigations at congressional level are also a waste of resources. But if there's there, let's see where it is.
Well, I don't think this is going to be the last we hear of January 6th either, as certain things start to get uncovered. We're finding out more federal officials on the ground than initially stated. So indeed, we're going to probably hear more on that front. In the meantime, you mentioned the government shutdown, Bill. We're now reaching day 29, the Republican-backed continuing resolution, again failing to reach the 60 votes needed in the Senate. This is actually prompting some Republicans to suggest changing the filibuster. Senate Majority Leader John Thune has consistently defended the filibuster. Bill, this is a move last pursued by Democrats during the Biden administration. Do you believe that this could be a slippery slope? Is this something that neither party should be pursuing, or what are your thoughts?
I don't really care, to be perfectly honest with you, and I don't think most Americans do. I think this is one of these things that's become this nuclear option that keeps getting talked about and threatened about, and at some point somebody's going to pull the trigger. I'll be honest with you, as a Democrat, I think this is political malpractice by our party. I think we should have passed the CR, the Biden era spending CR. And I think we should have taken the Republicans to task for all the things in the big, beautiful bill that aren't coming true, and particularly the healthcare issues that aren't for illegal aliens. They're for American citizens that aren't going to be able to pay healthcare bills. But we're not having that debate right now because we're about to not be able to feed America because SNAP benefits are gone through. I think we've lost the narrative here. I hope the shutdown ends, but I think there's bipartisan support to get to an answer on healthcare. And it's not sending more money to insurance companies, by the way. It's getting down to the nitty gritty facts and figuring out how we save the ACA and make it work for Americans. But that conversation isn't happening right now. We're playing political football back and forth over who's going to blink first in Congress.
Chet, who is going to blink first? And several Republican members of Congress have told the Epoch Times, our sister media, that they're not on board with the idea of, getting rid of the filibuster. But realistically, where do you see everything going?
I think the American people need to understand, first and foremost, government shutdown should not be a reality in America. The federal government should be passing a budget. We have not had a budget in this country in the last 30 years, and everyone should be jumping up and down and screaming about that. And if we need to get rid of the filibuster in order to Congress to actually take votes and pass a budget, then I'm all for it. I think that it's ridiculous that we have so many Americans who have their lives turned upside down, again, over political gamesmanship. This is like WWE wrestling, but it has real impacts on real Americans in their day-to-day lives. Most people don't care about the politics. They just want the policies that are going to deliver for them. And like my colleague talked about, we should be having real conversations about healthcare, real conversations about how we're going to actually help everyday Americans, but also how we're going to pay for that. And I think that's been the real issue that we need to think about in terms of a budget and in terms of the national debt. But I think in terms of this government shutdown and in terms of the filibuster, we've already gotten rid of it for judges. So it's in place today simply for these bills. And I think we should just, again, kill the filibuster and get to the work of protecting and helping the American people.
Lastly, Trump 2028. He was asked about it on Air Force One. Let's have a look.
So we have the greatest economy we've ever had. I have my highest poll numbers that I've ever had. And, based on what I read, I guess I'm not allowed to run. So we'll see what happens. If you read it, it's pretty clear. I'm not allowed to run. It's too bad.
President appearing to acknowledge that he, isn't allowed to run despite the Trump 2028 hat that he has in the Oval Office from time to time, handing out to folks. Bill, what do you think Republicans are going to do in 28?
They're going to run. I mean, I've always said that the biggest impediment to Donald Trump running for another term is going to be the Republicans that want to succeed him. They're not going to allow this. I think as Democrats, we've got to be a little bit more reserved here. America's pastime. We got the World Series going on. One thing you learn in a baseball game is you don't swing at every pitch. We got to let some of these go by. He's playing games, whatever he's doing. This is probably not a serious, substantive conversation. And, let the Republican primary take shape and see what's going to happen. And we need to figure out who our nominee is going to be. That's where we need to be focused.
That's for sure. Chet, what is next for President Trump after his presidency? And, he's offered up a potential Rubio-Vance ticket. That could be interesting to see who gets the top of it. Where do you see the Republicans headed the next cycle?
Well, I think we all see it's very clear. Republicans are going to win. And the real legacy for President Trump is to ensure that he has a presidential win following his in the end of his term. And quite frankly, Democrats are struggling. My colleague here is probably the most adult that you've heard on Democrats on television. Instead, they've been running around to these No Kings rallies and trying to push this same tired narrative that you hear again and again, talking about Republicans are fascists, and Republicans don't believe in democracy, et cetera. We saw it under Reagan, we saw it under Bush, and again, they're reviving it again to try to tread that out to attract President Trump. Democrats don't have a message. Their entire message for the last 16 years has been defeat Donald Trump. So I think Democrats are going to actually have a very difficult time in competing against Republicans when they actually have to come out with policies and ideas versus just attacking President Trump.
Bill Caruso, Chet Love, thank you both for coming on. We greatly appreciate your insights.